enter the otherworldly and dissipate into the unknown. You're tuning into 1013, the radio station from hell and back.
Welcome to Channel 1013, dear listeners. I am your storyteller, your music director, your sound against a silent night, and the only light shining in a dark world. This is the darker side, and above all else, I am your host, Herald Gravely. On today's broadcast, we'll be discussing the atrocities of the Kamo detachment from the Imperial Japanese Army, also known as the infamous Unit 731. We'll be taking a deep dive into the upcoming Silent Hill F, as well as its counterpart Resident Evil Requiem, with new music featured by the Homewreckers, their song titled Chicken with the Devil. We'll also be ending our pilot episode on a sweet note, one you won't expect, so stay tuned. Beginning with the tale of Unit 731. I must warn you that this story isn't a pretty one. In fact, it's pretty disgusting, showing off the horrors of mankind and our divulgence in science, while sacrificing human lives in the process. Viewer discretion is, of course, advised. In the far north of Manchuria, where the winter sky is the color of lead and the wind cuts like broken glass, there was a place the locals only called the factory. It stood silent on the horizon, a cluster of smokestacks and frozen roofs, breathing plumes of white into the air. No one entered willingly, and those who went in never came back. Inside its walls, the Imperial Japanese Army housed Unit 731, a secret laboratory where science had been twisted into something unrecognizable. The prisoners, men, women, and children alike, were not called by their names. They were maruta, logs to be carved open, studied, and discarded. In the sterile light of the operating rooms, white coats moved with clinical precision, scalpels whispering through skin that still trembled with life. Pain was not an accident here. It was the point. Eyes widened in silent shock, fingers clenched against restraints, breath shuddered in clouds as the cold from outside seeped in. In the frostbite chambers, limbs were plunged into freezing air until flesh turned glassy and pale. Water was poured over bare skin, forming a clear shell of ice, and the doctors watched, taking notes, until color drained away and the first black fractures appeared. Elsewhere, rows of cages rattled as plague-infected fleas swarmed inside. Whole villages became test fields for invisible poisons. Disease crept through the streets like a shadow, and the bodies were gathered up with quiet efficiency. At night, the furnaces glowed in the dark, their low roar rolling across the snowfields. Ash drifted on the wind, settling on rooftops and river ice. The guards called it waste, the villagers called it something else. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the gates opened. The doctors, the guards, the officers, they were gone. No trials, no graves. Just abandoned buildings standing silent under the weight of what they had seen. Today the ruins are hushed, half swallowed by weeds and frost. But those who live nearby say the land never forgets. Some nights, when the snow falls heavy and the air is still, the wind carries strange sounds. The slow click of boots on concrete, the metallic rasp of a scalpel tray, and the faintest, almost human cry swallowed by the cold. It's become a story that is now more pronounced and recognized by the public. Just like the casualties of the Second World War, so few people recognize that Japan had an extremely high casualty count, killing between 19 million to 30 million people across Asia. Although we often think of the Holocaust as World War II's greatest atrocity, other nations like Japan, including Italy and otherwise, should also be taken into account, especially when it comes to the lives of those experimented on. In the fog-drenched valleys of 1960s, rural Japan lies Ebisugoka, a picturesque mountain town where tradition holds a vice grip on its people. Beneath the quiet streets and swaying cherry blossoms, something ancient stirs, a sickness woven into the soil, into the wood of the houses, into the whispers carried by the wind. You are Hinako Shimizu, a high school girl caught in the suffocating web of expectation, gossip, and unspoken rules. The days are a cycle of ritual and restraint until the fog arrives. It drifts in silently, curling between the narrow alleys and shrine gates. At first, it is only a presence, a weight in the air, but soon it seeps into the very fabric of reality, turning blossoms to blood-red tendrils, twisting neighbors into contorted mockeries of themselves, and replacing the known world with a shifting dreamscape of corridors, shrines, and fields that breathe. Developed by Neobards Entertainment, veterans of atmospheric design and survival horror, Silent Hill F represents a turning point for Konami's legendary series. Motoi Okamoto, the project's producer and a former Nintendo creative mind, has gathered a team of genre specialists. Acclaimed visual novelist Rikishi07, whose When They Cry series cemented his mastery of psychological horror. Kira, whose monster and environment designs are as beautiful as they are grotesque. And composers Akira Yamaoka and Kensuke Inage, whose music layers melancholy, dread, and unease into every step you take. This is not the rusted, industrial Silent Hill of old. This is a horror steeped in Japanese folklore, rural superstition, and the silent violence of social order. Yet its DNA still carries the hallmarks of the series: unreliable realities, moral ambiguity, and the inescapable weight of personal guilt. Gameplay flows between tense, deliberate melee combat, intricate puzzles, and moments of stillness where every sound is suspect. As you explore, you will encounter choice-driven branching paths with 5 distinct endings that reveal different truths about Hinako, the town, and the darkness binding them together. The choices you make will not only shape the ending, but alter the way the town reacts, decays, or survives. Early previews from around the world speak of a game that feels alive with dread. Reviewers praise its cultural authenticity, its painterly use of Unreal Engine 5 to render the fine details of rotting petals and damp tatami mats, and its willingness to linger in quiet horror rather than constant action. Others note that its later stages swell with combat intensity, something that may divide series purists, but all agree that its atmosphere is one of the most oppressive and haunting in recent memory. For Konami, Silent Hill F is more than a sequel. It is the first wholly original entry in over a decade, a statement that the series is not merely being resurrected, but reborn. Positioned alongside Silent Hill 2 Remake and Townfall, it stands as the spearhead of a broader revival, one that aims to respect the series' history while expanding its boundaries. On September the 25th, 2025, or September 23rd for Deluxe Edition Early Access, The Fog will reach your doorstep. Available on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XXS, and PC, Silent Hill F invites both newcomers and veterans to step into Ibisugaoka's haunted streets. Pre-orders bring small talismans of comfort, uniforms, omamori charms, but nothing will protect you from what waits in the other world. In Silent Hill F, beauty is a mask for decay. Every blossom hides a wound. Every shadow might be alive. And in the end, the most terrifying thing you'll face is not the creatures born from the fog, but the truths you've buried deep within yourself. When the fog comes, will you walk forward or look away? And if you look away, will you be looking towards Raccoon City for comfort instead? Resident Evil Requiem is both a homecoming and a haunting. After decades away, Capcom is dragging us back to Raccoon City, not the familiar police stations or burning streets of the past, but a place long since abandoned, where the wind carries only whispers and the dead outnumber the living. Launching February 27th, 2026 for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X/S, and PC. It is the 9th mainline entry in the series and the cornerstone of the franchise's 30th anniversary celebration. The story follows Grace Ashcroft, an FBI analyst who has spent years suppressing the memory of her mother's gruesome death inside the Wrenwood Hotel. 8 years later, a strange pattern of ritual killings and symbols draws her back, not only to the hotel, but to the ruins of Raccoon City itself. What she finds is not just a crime scene, but a living, rotting labyrinth of secrets. Directed by Koshi Nakanishi, Resident Evil 7 Revelations, Requiem abandons overpowered heroes and blockbuster gunfights in favor of vulnerability and dread. Grace is not a soldier. She is unarmed in spirit, armed only in necessity. The game allows players to switch instantly between first-person and third-person perspectives, merging the suffocating intimacy of RE7 with the tactical visibility of RE4 Remake. The streets, hallways, and derelict buildings are rendered in chilling detail through the latest iteration of the RE engine, with photorealistic lighting, volumetric fog, and sweat-beaded skin that betrays every moment of fear. Every shadow feels alive. Every sound, a dripping pipe, a shifting floorboard, could mean something is nearby, and sometimes it does. Requiem doubles down on survival horror fundamentals, scarce ammunition, deliberate combat, puzzles that force you to stop and think while the clock ticks in your head. The world rewards curiosity. Items can hide secrets when inspected. Environments can be manipulated to evade enemies, but every decision has weight. Exploration is never safe, and hesitation can be fatal. Early previews from Summer Game Fest 2025 were met with excitement and unease. Critics praised its oppressive atmosphere, fluid perspective shifting, and the return to a slower, more methodical pace of horror. Some compared its opening hotel sequence to the dread of PT, a slow tightening of the noose before the real nightmare begins. Capcom will give players their first hands-on experience at Gamescom 2025, but the full Requiem will play out on February 27th. The title is not just a continuation of Resident Evil's story, it's a meditation on its legacy. Raccoon City is a graveyard, but it still has songs to sing, and Grace Ashcroft will be forced to listen until the very last note. This is not a return to save the city. This is a descent to bear witness to its final, unending funeral. And when the Requiem ends, you may wish you had never heard it. And after so much terror involved in tonight's show, I think it's time we take a short music break. Here's the Texan-based band, the Homewreckers, and their latest single, Chicken with the Devil. Stay tuned. We have one final story for you all before the night's end. Though, you might want to end the night early before the nightmares begin.
Well, she told me she was getting married, but honey, you can have me on the side. She was a big, rich woman with blonde hair and big blue eyes. Well, she was evil and mean, but the best you ever seen. Had me praying on my knees, Lord, give me the keys. I'm playing chicken with the devil, but the Lord is on my side. Well, we were fucking and loving every moment that her husband turned his head. He had a Colt 45 and jealousy running through his head.
Welcome back to the Darkerside on 1013. As always, I am your host, Herald Gravely. And before we end tonight's broadcast, I'd like to tell you a story, one that is based out of our station's hometown of Greywater. Whether it's a true story or not, I'll leave up to you. Greywater always felt too quiet in autumn. Its streets too narrow, its houses too close, its woods too deep. On Halloween night, the air carried that stillness, the kind that made you hear your own breathing. By dusk, the neighborhood was glowing. Carved pumpkins bled candlelight onto porches, paper skeletons rattled in the wind, and costumed children darted between houses. That's when the candy appeared. Perfect little orbs wrapped in crinkled black paper, tied with a single loop of ribbon. No one knew the house it came from. Some kids swore it was given to them by a pale old man at the edge of town. Others swore they just found it at the bottom of their pillowcases. The first bite was pure ecstasy, a rush of caramel warmth, like fresh fudge melting on the tongue. But the flavor didn't fade. It deepened, turned metallic, then earthy, like the taste of rainwater from a rusted gutter. The longer they chewed, the more their lips stained black. By 8:43 p.m., Greywater's stillness shattered. Mrs. Carmichael opened her front door at the sound of banging. Her daughter Abby was on the porch. Her princess tiara was tilted, her head twitching in quick, unnatural snaps. When Abby smiled, her teeth were jagged, overlapping, tearing her own gums as she grinned. Black syrup ran down her chin. Abby, baby, are you? The girl shrieked and launched herself forward, knocking her mother onto the steps. Her tiny fingers dug into skin like fishhooks. Something inside her was growling, a wet animal noise that didn't belong in a human throat. Down on Maple Street, a group of costumed kids hunched over a screaming man, their mouths working in quick, jerking motions. The sound was not chewing, it was tearing. Porch lights flickered, one by one, as houses fell silent except for the pounding of small, bloodied hands against locked doors. At the Greywater diner, Sheriff Kane slammed the deadbolt shut just as a swarm of them reached the glass. Their eyes were milk white, their skin stretched tight like wax over bone. They slammed against the window in rhythm, their blackened teeth clicking in unison. Kane backed away, shotgun trembling in his grip. "They're just kids," he muttered, voice breaking. Outside, the candy wrappers skittered in the wind like dead leaves. And at the far end of Main Street, under the lone street lamp, stood the man in the tattered coat. His face was hidden in shadow, but his smile gleamed pale in the dark. A half-empty sack of the black-wrapped candy dangled from his hand. He whispered to no one. Every year, they come back for more. Behind him, more children were coming, pouring out of the woods, out of the cornfields, their little shoes crunching the gravel, eyes fixed on Greywater. The wind carried the scent of rotting sugar, and it was still only 9 p.m. With that chilling tale, I leave you all to the night. Remember to stay in the light whenever possible. Close your bedroom door, and above all else, keep an ear open. Until next time, this has been 1013 The Darker Side, with Herald Gravely now, signing out.